I'm happy to have a long history and memory of Mundelein and happy for a chance to talk today. I actually grew up just a few miles from here. I finished grade school at St. Jerome's, went to the Immaculata, taught by the BVMs, going to high school in 1928. I passed by the structure that was going up as Mundelein on Sheridan Road, watched it go up brick by brick. And when the building itself was finished and they wanted to dedicate it, they found they didn't have a big enough band to welcome Cardinal Mundelein. So those of us who were at Immaculata, and I played the clarinet, put on Mundelein uniforms and welcomed the Cardinal at Mundelein's major dedication. That was my first contact, really. And then I had a scholarship to Mundelein, but I decided to enter the order instead. The order that I entered was an education order, and most states required 2 years of college for teaching in grade school. But the order, which had a college in Dubuque, Iowa, way back, was never satisfied with that. And we would go back summers, or we'd do it in other ways. And then the request of the order, getting a PhD in philosophy at St. Louis University, and coming brand new to Mundelein to teach philosophy. I was still one of the youngest members on the faculty. Many of the sisters had been there since the college opened. And to my surprise, after 6 years of teaching philosophy in the way things were done in those days, I received a letter which simply said, "You have been appointed the president of Mundelein College." I could spell president, and that was just about it. But what impressed me when I came to Mundelein was the number of women who had achieved in areas, science, history. One of the sisters was a lawyer. They took for granted that women could do these things and were going to do them. And the result also inspired our women students to do the same, to consider that the world was open, not necessarily closed to women, not in a radical sense, but a matter-of-fact sense that this is where we are we are gifted. And one of the things that became very important was to learn from everybody I could, to accept their concepts, to accept their expectations, and to try to put them into operation, often conflicting ideas. And how do they work together? And how can you make those ideals real? What I learned was the value of listening. It became rather important for those of us women who were in higher education to make our way into the various fields of endeavor. And I ended up often being the first woman of this or that, not because I wanted to be famous, but because I saw, as a teacher of women at a women's college, that if we were going to open up the fields, whether it was law or medicine or leadership or politics, it was important that women be seen visibly in a leadership position in that area. And I also was on innumerable boards. I always said I didn't mind being the first one on the board, just so that I wasn't the only one by the time I went off. If you look at the history of Mundelein women, you will find that many of them were the first in many areas of leadership through the decades. One of our sisters had the first PhD in astrophysics in the country, and I recognized very early in my years that that was only the beginning. And I think maybe I was able to encourage of our students to get doctorate degrees in various areas, some of them studying abroad, some of them studying in various other areas of the country. That was suddenly becoming expected of the male. We decided it was also important for women who had the gifts and the desire and were able to fulfill their hopes. The world of communication, thanks to radio and TV, was suddenly bringing into the home an awareness of the complexity of the world and its needs. And I think the international wars also alerted us to the fact that the United States, if it was to be a leader in the world, would have to know what it's all about. Not only able to read and write, but able to know history, philosophy, be able to plan the future, and the importance of understanding the relevance and also the implications of knowledge. But what I think is essential is that the teachings of Christ be assimilated into the culture of the times, both to enrich the culture, to criticize it, and to strengthen it. Vatican II tried to open up the mysteries of the Church with the help of all the knowledge and insights, theology that we have had. And many things that we took for granted were dropped and something else added, new freedom. That freedom involved much more responsibility. You have to be responsible for your actions, for your decisions. So one of our most successful programs was a continuing education program for women who could come, get their courses, work for their degrees, and graduate, often at the age of 30, 35, even 40. And incidentally, what happened was that many young women who had to go to work decided that was a way for them to get their education also. But with our program, our weekend college program, we opened up the door for many women who would not otherwise, who maybe had 2 years and never thought they would never finish. I would say the college developed with the times. There was a new understanding of the role of communication with those who differed from you. At one point, one faith didn't talk to another. And you'll find early in our history, we were having Jewish students at Mundelein, not trying to make them think the way you think, but trying to understand the basis on which they carried their conviction, whether it was in race relations or other civil rights activities. We could say there's a challenge going on down south. How many of you would like to volunteer to go? So sometimes 20, 30 students would get on in a couple of volunteer cars or trucks, go down to Selma. I might mention that in order to help racially, some of our Spanish majors taught English to the policemen downtown who didn't bother learning Spanish and were brushing off the Hispanics that they couldn't speak to. And our students taught them Spanish. We believed in people. One legacy I see is integrity. I think that Mundelein really believed in what it was teaching and made every effort to be sure that it represented the ideals, not only theoretically but practically, and instilled them in the students. It was special.